Is it luck, coincidence, or the providence of God? There is nothing like luck and coincidences regarding God and those aligned with his kingdom principles. Instead, everything occurs according to God's foreordained plans. God does not bring about everything in life, but he knows and allows everything, good or bad, according to his divine plans. God is not the author of evil, but sometimes he permits it to happen for reasons best known to him. On June 12, 2025, India Air Flight 171 was slated to depart Ahmedabad Airport in the early afternoon with its final destination to London's Gatwick International Airport. Preliminary checks indicated that the aircraft was flying worthy. Consequently, 242 boarded the flight. As passengers boarded the 787 Dreamliner, another passenger, Bhumi Chauman, a 28-year-old university student from Bristol, the United Kingdom, had checked in online but struggled to make her way through the bustling traffic to the airport. She pressured the commercial driver taking her to the airport to do his best and get her there quickly. Unfortunately, the traffic was horrific and unfavorable to her plight, or at least so she thought. Upon arrival at the airport and going through the security checkpoint, Bhumi arrived at Air India's Flight 171 departure gate 10 minutes before departure time. Though she already had her boarding pass due to checking in online, the Air India staff at the counter refused to allow her to board the flight. They insisted that it was an international flight, so boarding was completed 15 minutes before departure. Bhumi pleaded with the staff that she was a student and wife who had to get back home to her family and school, but the answer was a resounding no. Bhumi cried and watched as Air India's Boeing 787 Flight 171 taxied down the runway. Bhumi then went to a booth within the terminal to sit and rest and later figure out her next move. Shortly thereafter, the news of the crash of the Dreamliner reached the airport. It was reported that the aircraft that had just taken off less than a minute prior had fatally crashed in a medical school building, killing all 42 passengers and crew members on board, except one 40-year-old passenger who escaped alive. In horror and timidity, Bhumi could not believe what she heard. The very flight that she missed 10 minutes late had crashed, killing 241 people on board and many others who were on the ground. At that point, Bhumi realized that God had ordered her steps and prevented her from making the flight. A 10-minute delay spared her life. At this moment, she was grateful to God for the traffic congestion and getting to the departure gate 10 minutes late. She could always get another flight, but not another life. This incident teaches us that sometimes what seems bad may be God's way of saving us from a disaster. As human beings, we do not even know what may happen in 2 minutes in the future. What we consider bad luck may be a blessing in disguise, according to Romans 8:28. And we know that God works all things out for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose. In Genesis 50:20, Joseph told his brothers after miraculously becoming prime minister in Egypt, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of lives." When you do your best and end up 10 minutes late, do not be discouraged and consider it bad luck. It may be the work of demonic agents, but the invisible hands of God may be behind it, turning it around for your good. A 10-minute delay at the airport gave Bhumi another chance to keep living. Nothing is bad luck or a coincidence for those in God's plans and purposes. Remember, God can turn seemingly bad situations into good. In everything we should give thanks, for it is the will of God in Christ Jesus for our lives. As we celebrate Bhumi's miracle, let us continue to pray for the bereaved families of those who lost their lives. Isn't it incredible how a mere 10 minutes can alter the course of a life? Bhumi, sitting in that booth, reflected on the chaotic moments that led to her fortunate fate. Each honk from the congested streets, every frustration she felt during that journey seemed trivial compared to the gravity of the situation unfolding just moments before. As news spread like wildfire through the terminal, passengers huddled around screens, gasping and murmuring in disbelief. Bhumi felt a profound mix of relief and sorrow as she listened to the unfolding tragedy. While others would never return home again, she had been granted an unexpected reprieve. She thought about her family waiting for her back in Bristol, their smiles and warm embraces waiting at the airport. Bhumi closed her eyes for a moment, silently offering thanks to God for the divine intervention that she had not understood earlier. How many times had she brushed off inconveniences, labeling them as mere annoyances? Today, those very annoyances had become a shield against an unimaginable fate. As she opened her eyes again, The terminal was still filled with hushed conversations, but now her heart pulsed with a different rhythm, a rhythm of gratitude intermingled with grief for those lost. Each passerby, now a reminder of the fragility of life, made her aware of the preciousness of every single moment. Bhumi's thoughts were interrupted as a fellow traveler, a young man with tears streaking down his face, approached her. He needed someone to talk to share in the shock of what had just transpired. "Did you hear about the flight?" He trembled, his voice barely above a whisper. Bhumi nodded, her heart aching for him and the countless lives transformed in that instant. "I can't believe it," he continued, shaking his head in disbelief. "My sister was on that plane. She was coming back from India." The raw emotion in his voice evoked a deep sense of empathy within Bhumi. She reached out and placed a comforting hand on his shoulder, silently assuring him he wasn't alone in this moment. As they stood together, a shared sense of grief hung in the air, knitting them momentarily into a fragile bond. Bhumi found herself wanting to offer him words of comfort, but the right thing to say eluded her. Instead, she simply shared her own experience, explaining how she had been denied boarding just moments before the tragedy struck. "It feels surreal," Bhumi whispered, her voice trembling. "I was right there, and it could have easily been me." The young man's eyes widened, the weight of her words settling into the heavy silence between them. In a world bound by suffering and loss, it was a bitter reminder of how quickly life could change. "Maybe it was meant to be," he said, struggling to understand their circumstances through his grief. As they comforted each other, the terminal buzzed with hushed breaths and whispered prayers, creating a cocoon of shared humanity amid the heartbreak. Bhumi squeezed his shoulder gently, hoping her gesture brought him a sliver of solace, while her mind continued to swim through the miracles hidden within events that appear tragic. Each person in the terminal, lost in their thoughts, sharing in grief, had stories to tell, lives that had intersected for a fleeting moment beneath the veil of tragedy. As Bhumi continued to support the young man, she couldn't shake the feeling that life had dealt them both a heavy hand. She looked around the terminal. It was as if time had slowed, each face reflecting myriad emotions: shock, despair, disbelief. Among the bustle, she spotted a mother cradling her child, tears streaming down her face, embodying an overwhelming sadness that echoed in the hearts of everyone present. Bhumi's heart ached for the lives forever changed, for the families left shattered in the wake of such a tragic turn of events. She realized how fleeting their encounters had become, the chaotic nature of the airport morphing into a solemn reminder of how every moment counts. "We have to hold on to hope," Bhumi murmured softly to the young man, wishing to instill some strength amidst their shared sorrow. Hope may be fragile, but it could also bind individuals together, even when confronted by unimaginable grief. As they stood in silent contemplation, each heartbeat pulsed with the weight of unresolved questions about fate, loss, and the enduring spirit of humanity. It was a moment she would never forget, as life wove the delicate threads of their stories into a tapestry, both heartbreaking and filled with the glimmer of resilience. While Bhumi and the young man found some comfort in sharing their stories, the air in the terminal was thick with sadness. The noise of the bustling airport faded into the background as they focused on each other, seeking a connection in their sorrow. Bhumi realized that amidst the raw emotions, there was an unspoken bond forming, one forged through loss and survival. She took a deep breath and said, "Life can be so unpredictable, can't it?" The young man nodded, still grappling with the weight of his reality. "I never thought I'd experience something like this," he replied, his voice cracking with emotion. Bhumi felt the weight of his words resonate within her. They were a mirror of her own thoughts. "None of us ever do," she whispered, glancing around at the anxious faces surrounding them, each grappling with their own fears and uncertainties. While their paths were marred by tragedy, Bhumi sensed a flicker of hope, the potential for connection amid the chaos. As Bhumi and the young man stood together, their hearts heavy yet intertwined in shared sorrow, she realized that even amidst despair, the human spirit could find solace in unity. Their encounter, born from tragedy, was a reminder that life continues, filled with moments demanding gratitude and connection, binding them in ways they had yet to understand.